FOMO.
My name is Patrick J. McGinnis, and I'm a FOMO Sapiens. And since you're here, I'm going to bet that you are too. And when you're like us and Monday comes around, you don't dread the new week. No, you wake up every Monday morning knowing that this week might just be the best one yet. This is FOMOnday, the snackable show that starts your week right with hot takes, life hacks, listener mail, and even some FOMO therapy. Hey everybody, welcome to FOMOndays, the snackable companion show to FOMO Sapiens, which will of course be back on Thursday with a brand new interview. This week we have Sunil Gupta, the author of Everyday Dharma. Now Sunil has been on the show before. He came on for his first book, Backable, which is really about how to get anybody to back you. And I love that book. And his new book is great because it's about ancient wisdom. And he talks about how we can take some of the wisdom of our forebears and his grandfather, for example, and apply it to our lives today, which sounds good to me. Really sounds good to me. Now, we're going to make a little change here. Speaking of the opposite of ancient wisdom, we have brand new things. And I want to talk to you about that because this week down in Argentina, or I should say last week, I just got back. And I was doing a whole series of events with a new partner of mine, a company called Mercado Ads. It's part of Mercado Libre, this massive, amazing tech company in Latin America. Look it up. And you're going to be hearing a lot more about this partnership. I'm not going to get into it today because it's a whole other thing. We're going to be focusing on that in a bunch of different ways because we're doing some very cool stuff together that has real value for business people. But just, I'm going to hold off on that. Instead, we're going to talk about today something that happened during this press event that I did where a reporter asked me about this new term that had come up in the press this week. And in fact, I saw it myself. Somebody DM'd me on Instagram, this new concept called FOMO, fear of becoming obsolete. And it was written up in McKinsey's Mind the Gap, which is a newsletter. And they said this, here's a quote from the newsletter. You've heard of FOMO, or the fear of missing out, and its counterpart JOMO, the joy of missing out. There's a new kid on the block occupying Gen Z's mindshare, FOMO, or the fear of becoming obsolete. And then they have a little joke. They say, anyone else in the TOCA tired of counting acronyms camp? Yeah, I think probably many of us are. I mean, I don't get sick of them. But I would say, McKinsey, you're not helping the problem, right? You're adding another one into our media diet. Now, they go on to talk about where this comes from. And apparently, there's a new Gallup survey that shows that Gen Zers are most fearful that tech will make their jobs obsolete compared with any other age group. And they're more afraid now than they have been before. So the last couple of years, things picked up. And McKinsey then goes on to talk about the fact that it's understandable. Think about generative AI, right? The hot topic out there these days. And then think about the fact that it's highly likely that Gen Z will be deeply disrupted by Gen AI, right? And it's not surprising because, if you played with it, you can see. However, there is a note of caution here about how much to freak out because what's interesting about Gen AI, and this is a really good point, is it flips the traditional narrative about how labor works with technology. In the past, automation displaced workers without college degrees. But with Gen AI, it is going to be people who are, skilled laborers working in knowledge industries, right? And so that is kind of scary. However, it is not going to be equal. We don't know where it's going to be yet. And you don't have to sit around and just take it. If you start learning skills now, of course, you can prepare. So that's what the whole FOMO thing was about that McKinsey put out there. And I want to talk about that, my thoughts, my reaction, my hot take, as it were, right after this break.
FOMO.
All right, we're talking about FOMO. Do we like it or not? Do we like it or not? Well, here's the thing. Number one, I have some news for everybody. There already is a FOMO, okay? Because for those of you who've been following for a long time and know any of my work, the same day I invented FOMO, I invented FOMO back in 2003. And I wrote an article in 2004, May 10th, 2004, called McGinnis's Two Foes, Social Theory at HBS, Harvard Business School, about FOMO and FOBO. Those were the two foes. And I put a third one in there, FODA, fear of doing anything. But let's focus on FOMO and FOBO. Fear of a better option. It's that idea that we live in an age where, you can continue searching. Anything you want, you can find a lot of. We live in a period of deep abundance. So you go to Amazon to buy something, and you know how that is. And then, you have way too much kind of selection when you get to choice paralysis. And there is a feeling, a sort of psychological safety that comes from the idea that if you keep searching, you'll probably find a better something. But the problem, of course, is that if you keep searching forever, you never choose anything, and then you're not happy. And the more you search, the more time and energy you put into something, so that when you choose, then your fear of choosing the wrong thing is higher, and you're more likely to regret the choice, even though it's a perfectly fine choice. So that is FOBO, fear of a better option. It's even trademarked. I have some trademarks out on that. So FOBO, fear of becoming obsolete. Welcome. But it kind of already exists. So I think that's like a material fact that I will just present that it makes me think that FOBO is a little, it's sort of like, Google this before you start coming up with your own new acronyms that are called FOBO, right? It's just do the work. So that one, that's a negative on FOBO, let's just say. However, it's not all about me, obviously, or FOBO, fear of a better option. It is true that there is massive AI FOMO out there. And I've been talking about this a lot. I just was in Brazil and I gave a talk to a bunch of venture capitalists. And I was just like, talking about this concept, the flavor of the month. Now, interestingly, when you translate flavor of the month into Portuguese, it's not sabor do mês, which you would think it would be. That's flavor of the month. They don't have that concept. Instead, they use this expression, bola da vez, which means the ball at this time, I guess you would translate it. And it comes from the game snooker, in which colored balls have a correct sequencing for pocketing. And the next one is the one that you get your attention on. So that's the bola da vez, the ball of this moment, of this time. And, you translate it into sort of the craze of the moment, or in the spotlight, or flavor of the month, or whatever. And AI is the bola da vez. It's the flavor of the month. I think it's going to stick around, obviously. I mean, this is, pretty interesting technology. However, the more you play with stuff like ChatGPT, obviously it's just the very early days, but the more you play with it, the more you realize what it's good at and what it's not, right? And it gets back to the point McKinsey was making. It's like not going to be putting everybody out of their work, just some people. And other people are going to have new opportunities. What I think is interesting is when you think about what it does well, it is, you can see it's going to really put people out of work. It's incredible at translating. Incredible. It's a great editor. I can see it really changing education, right? Because a bot could teach you something. And so there's all those things like editing and translating could be massively disrupted very quickly. So that stuff is real. But some of the other stuff, it's bola da vez. It's just like, lets everybody just see what happens. But people are just way too hypey about it. In fact, I saw this thing on CNN, and you had Christian Amanpour talking about AI. And then every commercial, they must have sold commercials specifically, maybe. But all the things were like companies talking about what they're doing in the AI space. Like, it's like some like random company that, shouldn't be talking about AI. It's like, some coffee company. It's like, our new AI does these things. Everybody wants to be on the trend. And so that just makes me think that we need to step back and be a bit more circumspect. Okay. Now, next, ROI. I think this is the big one. All this new technology, it's all dreams and hopes until you can figure out the return on investment of using it. Because remember big data? Everybody talked about big data. Like whatever came of that, of course, there's a lot of data out there, but a lot of companies talked about it. They didn't really do anything with it. They didn't figure out how to make it valuable. Same with this. If you don't know how to generate either a savings or a revenue increase out of AI, then, what are we talking about here? So ROI is really important in all of this stuff. whether it's, you're figuring out what you want to do for a living, or you're implementing it into your company, or you're feeling FOMO, fear of becoming obsolete. Just think about ROI. Finally, and this is the big one for me on all of this stuff, and I've talked about this before, but I will once again say it. One of the reasons why there's so much FOMO is because the insiders, the people who quote unquote know all about this, act like it's some big secret that none of us can understand. It's like, oh, AI, way too complicated for you simple people. And that creates an air of exclusivity, a velvet rope that makes everybody else feel apprehensive, because it's like, oh, I don't understand, so I can't sort of predict where things are going. And we got to get rid of that, because that's what's driving these fears. Fear is driven by uncertainty. When you know what's coming at you, you can make a plan. And it stinks sometimes, but you can make a plan. When you don't, and you're told that you will never understand because it's way too sort of high above your pay grade, then you're left out of the conversation. So I would encourage all technologists and people in this space to stop acting like that. It's so pervasive, and frankly, it's just not cool. It's very, and by the way, you're sowing your own demise, because at some point when people realize the effects, they're going to be angry. And so you're better off to just integrate them into the conversation earlier and recognize this is not rocket science. A lot of it is very complex, but the applications of it are understandable. So stop being elitist and just talk to people. All right, everybody. Those are my thoughts on fear of becoming obsolete. If you have any thoughts, ideas, questions, you can reach me at Patrick J. McGinnis at Instagram, at PJ McGinnis on Twitter, and you can email me at letsconnect@patrickmcginnis.com. All right, I'll see you on Thursday with Sunil. But until then, take care of yourselves, FOMO Sapiens. FOMO. If you like today's show, please be sure to rate it and recommend it to your friends. And as always, you can find me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis, on Twitter at PJ McGinnis, and on the web at FOMOsapiens.com or PatrickMcGinnis.com, where you can get all kinds of free resources to live a more decisive and entrepreneurial life. FOMO. Want more FOMO Sapiens and FOMOnday? Head over to FOMOsapiens.com, where you can listen to past episodes, learn more about the show, and find out how to advertise. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Patrick J. McGinnis and on Twitter at PJ McGinnis.